Today we're going to be talking about Houdini digital asset versioning. And you can go to learncreategame.com/techart/Houdini digital asset versioning for all the source code and screenshots of everything I'm about to show here today. So we're going to be talking about how to provide versioning for your digital assets. So we are going to do the new style versioning, where we basically have a drop down, and the drop down shows us all the available versions, and we can also kind of set which one that we want to have. The other thing I'm going to be doing is a little tool shelf tool here. So you can select any digital asset and you can basically click new version, and it'll display all the information about your digital asset and your version. And then you can sort of just up one version and say create a new one. And this is going to switch over to version 1.0.008. So I'll be going through how I set that tool up as well. So the first thing that we need to do is basically make sure that we have this asset bar for our digital assets. And you do that by going to Assets and Asset Manager. And on the configuration side of the operators here, on the other side, you will have a drop down here saying Asset Bar. And by default, it's set to hide. So we want to say display a menu of all of our definitions. This is very nice sort of when you're developing and you want to allow for a free sort of option to switching versions and such. If you want to control that via Python or something, you can say display current version, and that shows sort of where the definition lives on the hard drive and the current version number without letting the user necessarily switch version in the UI. But we're going to have that turned on, and now we can sort of access all of our current versions here. So let's talk about how you create a version in the first place manually. To create a new version, we first need to find our digital asset or definition in the asset manager. So we right click on our HDA and say show in asset manager. That will basically select where the digital asset lives. And if you right click on it and say like I want to create a new version off of this, you just say copy, and that will basically take the network that you have at that version and copy it into this new one. So the versioning is defined in the way we name our digital asset. You will see a extremely similar window when you first create a digital asset as well. So for the operator name, if you use these two colons will basically define a namespace. So namespaces are really nice because it allows you to take all your custom digital assets and put them under a namespace for your organization or for your company or for your project or however you want to divide that up. And then you can use that namespace later in finding all the digital assets in a scene with that namespace. There's a Python function that I have at that blog post that basically shows how to collect nodes in a scene based on namespace. Main name, so I just named this node HDA versioning. And then after the last namespace basically defines the version. And you can choose to go with just like larger version numbers if you want. You don't have to do this 000 or padded 0 version at the end. I'm just going to manually type in 9 there and say accept. And now you can see that when this has been done processing, we have another version 9, switch over to it, that should update. So that's how you do it manually. Now we're going to go through how we can sort of automate and take a look at some Python code and how you access information about a node. So this is the way the version control window kind of looks when it pops up. We click here and we see the current version and all the information about our HDA. And then we can just use these integer fields to set the next version up. So we can go to 1.5.0.0.10 there and click create version, and we get a confirmation that, hey, do you really want to do this? So you can cancel or go back if you've made some mistake and just go ahead and say okay there. And then also through Python, it will set the latest version. So let's take a look at the code. The first thing we want to do is store the selection. So if I don't have anything selected, the length of my selection will be 0, and if I have multiple nodes selected. So if I just try to run this now, it says please select a single Houdini digital asset node. The next part here is basically we're checking for a definition that it is an HDA definition. So if I create just a null node here, that basically captures those instances where it's actually not a Houdini digital asset. If it is a digital asset, we continue and we store this selection node. We know there's one single one, so we just store this here as HDA node. So here you can get to the HDA definition, and the definition has a ton of useful stuff. One of them is like the library file path on disk that this HDA is pointing to. We can store the full current name here. And there's also a function that takes and gives you all the name components, those namespaces that we were talking about. So the version is the very last one, so that's why we go by the end there, so the current version string. And then we can split it up with the major is the first, since we did like 1.5, so the minor is the second. And then we check if there is even a revision, we store that out too. So then here is where you can basically check where all definitions for a specific library file path is. So now you have all the HDA definitions. So now we have basically everything we need about this digital asset. So now we want to create this user interface. And for that, I created a PySide window, version window. So let's just know that this right here will basically be a uninitialized window, and then we're going to use all these attributes and set the initial state of the window to all the information of our digital asset, like the versions and where the library file path is, etc. Jump over to the version window. So this is a PySide 2 QMain window. Set the parent to be the Houdini main window, because otherwise, like if I have this open and I minimize the application, the window would just kind of stay behind and go behind other windows. It wouldn't basically obey properly. So we basically set that parent right there. And then we create, this is basic kind of Qt UI building. So we set a layout and we create some controls here. So here's the labels on top. It basically goes top to bottom in the user interface. So a label, we set a current path label, and then this is a way to create a divider, a Q frame, and then you set a certain frame style on it. Then we create the Q spin box is an integer spinner. So we set the major version 1, the minor version 1, and the revision version 1 is a little special case, because Q spin box is like, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And we need the revision version to be 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, all the way up to 9, and then 0, 10. So here I've created I've subclassed the Q spin box and made my own kind of custom spin box, that is the Q padded spin box. So it inherits from Q spin box. So the only thing that we need to implement to get this to work are these two functions. So we have a text from value, and that's where we put in these zero padded value that we can return, and then the formatting back from the text to the actual integer value. So that's how we do that. And then we create our button that will basically activate us creating a new digital asset version. Then we add these controls to the layout and set the label for each control. And you can kind of look at there are the labels for when we add this row into the layout and set the label. And then we pass the current version label, which is the text that we will actually set when we return this object into our run function. So yeah, that is the user interface. So let's come back up here. So we basically initialize the interface with all the information that we have collected about the digital asset. We set the value of the major version, the spin box, and then we also set the minimum to be that. So we can't really go. You can remove that actually if you want to be able to set a version smaller, I just kind of assumed right here that you just want to create a new version and going forward, right? Moving forward, always moving forward. All right, so same thing with the minor version, the revision version, and here is how you connect up the button click to a function, and we want to pass in some variables, so we use partial. The import here is functool partial. So then here's our function name, set new version button command, and we pass in the HDA node that we want to set the version on, and the version window, so that we can query all this goodness that we've set. So let's jump to that function. That is pretty much the last thing, and because then we just pop up the window and show it, and everything's ready to rock and roll. So that function is here. So we again find out the library file path, check out the namebase and the versionings right here. We're querying that from the window and building up a string, and then we basically say, here's the new name. This is a debug thing that I forgot to remove. And then, so we build up the new name based on that. And basically it allows you to compare version strings, and it will actually treat them and figure out whether one is bigger or equal to another. So here you can basically implement saying, hey, I'm not going to allow for lower versioning, go higher, please. And then we create a pop-up there if that is the case. So we can demo that by just saying that, hey, the same version. No, the version number is the same, so please increase. Otherwise, that would overwrite our current version if you do that, and that could be bad, possibly. Anyways, here is that pop-up box at the end when you go, let's go up to 11. This is the pop-up box that comes up here saying that, hey, you want to proceed? And then we only do it if the user says okay, which is 0. So 0 and 1. So if the answer is 0. So it cancel, we just come back and the window remains. So if the answer is yes, this is the command to actually copy the HDA file into a new name. And then we again check all the definitions and set the HDA node to have the latest definition. And then we close out the versioning window. So there's all the Python code. I hope this was useful. Again, you can jump over to grab this shell command and download and use it as is, or change it to your heart's content. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks.